This is Political Psychology, and I'm your professor, Dr. Patrick Stewart. In this lesson, we consider the influence of facial displays in the political arena. While FaceTime has always been an important part of social mammal lifestyles, the proliferation of media in which public figures are in our face nearly 24 hours a day makes it understanding the influence of our first point of visual focus that much more important. We now know there is a mismatch with how we select our leaders and what we expect from them, as do the public figures who take full advantage of the new technologies available to them. This one-way form of communication, with us listening to leaders who we have a parasocial or fictional social relationship with, has led to the centralization of power. As a result, the mass media has a tendency to focus on some attributes of leadership at the expense of others that may be more salient in the name of viewership and financial success. Namely, the focus tends to be on competitive, agonistic types of leadership seen in addressing external threats to a nation, as seen with rally around the flag effect, and to internal threats to stability through competition. This focus means that we do not pay as much attention to the more affiliative, broaden and build, and tend and befriend strategies. However, with video conferencing now increasingly important in our interconnected world, we understand how all forms of facial displays are important. To be successful socially, politically, and professionally, one must have the emotional intelligence to read, respond to, and communicate emotional states effectively. The sections that follow consider first the political ethology of facial displays. It does so by considering the four basic groupings of behaviors important for followership and leadership. We then consider a framework in which the micro-momentary processing of stimuli is affected by both biological predispositions and learned response. The componential processing model of emotional appraisal provides us a way to consider what happens both consciously and preconsciously. Finally, we consider what is going on in the field by presenting findings regarding facial displays in politics in the United States and other nations. The political ethological approach to understanding facial display behaviors traces its roots back to the Dartmouth group of scholars. These political scientists and psychologists use findings from human and primate studies to first develop a theoretical framework, as seen here, before testing it in multiple different national political contexts. Their major finding was that facial display behavior could be clustered into four major categories. Of these four, anger, threat, and happiness reassurance are used mainly by individuals with higher social status in the pursuit of their leadership functions as dominant individuals. The other two, fear evasion and sadness appeasement, can be seen in followers in their submissive behavior. While acting in such a manner as suggested by these four different categories does not make one either dominant or submissive, these behaviors are seen more often with social primates, including humans, in the service of their social goals. Anger-threat is display behavior preceding aggressive behaviors and indicates willingness to enter into social conflict even if it means using physical attacks. When external threats are perceived, the rally effect is often used by leaders to bring their group together. The anger displays and threats posed by dominance within a group can be used to maintain social structure within a group by allowing others to show submissiveness instead of being physically harmed. As a result, these displays are often focused on those lower in the hierarchy. They can also be seen when competition occurs between individuals for positions of social dominance, as we will see in the video that follows. Here, 2012 Republican Party presidential candidate Mitt Romney shows his anger towards incumbent President Barack Obama subtly through a tongue show and a pressing up of his chin boss while staring at his opponent.
Unfortunately, Governor Romney's plan doesn't do it. We've got to do it in a responsible way by cutting out spending we don't need, but also by asking the wealthiest to pay a little bit more. That way we can invest in the research and technology that's always kept us at the cutting edge.
Happiness reassurance involves non-threatening displays such as smiles and raised eyebrows. Smiles can induce similar expressions and corresponding positive mood in others, and acts to neutralize aggression and can also be seen while greeting others to assure the lack of threat. Broaden and build strategies are used by leaders to strengthen their social connections that exist and invite affiliation where it does not, thus building the group. We see Hillary Clinton showing happiness reassurance through a series of smiles as the audience at the Democratic National Convention cheer for her nomination as presidential candidate in 2016. Senator Clinton is using this display behavior to not only strengthen her connections with the audience, but also to be likable enough to bring other people to the party and vote for her.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very.
Fear evasion indicates stress in response to being approached by strangers or when threatened by someone, whether in the group, often by those higher in status, or from outside the group. Leaders rarely show fear evasion due to it indicating their potential loss of control over that group in the face of internal or external threats. However, it has been observed in leaders during their nonverbal punctuation of threats faced by the group. In the video that follows, President Donald Trump engages in a form of nonverbal punctuation through a fear evasion display. However, it appears he uses it to punctuate his speech both visually by having his lip corners pulled straight back and his teeth showing, and audibly through the intake of breath.
Once again, France is the victim of brutal Islamic terrorism. Men, women, and children viciously mowed down, lives ruined, families ripped apart, a nation in mourning. The damage and devastation that can be inflicted by Islamic radicals has been proven over and over. At the World Trade Center, at an office party in San Bernardino, at the Boston Marathon, at a military recruiting center in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and many other locations.
Sadness appeasement by itself is a yielding behavior that serves to appease aggressors. It does so with the aim of allowing the individual displaying it to remain in the group by being inconspicuous, even helpless, and thus not posing a threat in the near or even long-term future as that individual considers how to change their behaviors. Leaders rarely show sadness appeasement due to it indicating their loss of control, as is the case with fear evasion. However, sadness appeasement has been observed in leaders to show they have empathy towards those suffering, thus increasing their perceived trustworthiness. In the video that follows, we see an example of sadness appeasement display by 2020 Democratic Party presidential candidate Joe Biden during his nomination acceptance speech. While we can see his chin box being pressed up, perhaps the more easily perceived aspects of sadness appeasement are his vocalizations and the slight watering in his eyes as he recounts his personal losses as he attempts to empathize with those having suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Look, I understand. I understand how hard it is to have any hope right now. On this summer night, let me take a moment to speak to those of you who have lost the most. I have some idea how it feels to lose someone you love. I know that deep black hole that opens up in the middle of your chest and you feel like you're being sucked into it. I know how mean and cruel and unfair life can be sometimes. But I've learned two things. First, your loved one may have left this earth, but they'll never leave your heart. They'll always be with you. You'll always hear them. And second, I found the best way through pain and loss and grief is to find purpose. As God's children, each of us have a purpose in our lives. We have a great purpose as a nation to open the doors of opportunity to all Americans, to save our democracy, to be a light to the world once again, and finally to live up to and make real the words written in the sacred documents that founded this nation, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.